Hello, everyone. It is me, Andrew, from the Ibrox channel podcast. Hope you're all doing well. It is, of course, Europa League Thursday. It's the days that we as Bears absolutely love and adore. It's a competition that's been very kind to us over the years. And yeah, we can't really blame everyone for thinking that way because it's been absolutely brilliant. And we're going over some stats looking into the Lyon game. So I'm just going to give you a little basic preview, but you know what? The Europa League's been a fantastic tournament for us, and we've only had 4 losses over the last 7 years. How unbelievable is that? That is something, isn't it? But there we go. So yeah, we'll get into a little bit about how we're feeling about the Lyon game tonight, because of course that will take place at Ibrox at 8 p.m. So, of course, the last couple of times that we faced Lyon, we actually ended up in a European final, which is a bit of a weird stat. Not something you'd expect, but of course, back in '07, where we beat them 3-0 away, when Benzema hit the crossbar about 3 times, I think. And of course, they beat us 3-0 at home. We obviously dropped out the Champions League and went on that amazing run to Manchester in 2008. And then, of course, in Gerrard's last season, when Gio took over, we, of course, lost 2-0 at Ibrox, drew 1-1 away, a Scott Wright masterclass, if I remember right. But of course, we went to Seville. So, yeah, there's something about playing Lyon. Yeah, so let's delve into Lyon, shall we? Let's do it. So this is just gonna be a little bit of a quick preview pod, just to kind of give you some kind of facts about what Lyon have been up to, what their results have been, and what I think how it's going to go tonight. But yeah, so let's delve into Lyon. So, how have they favoured under Pierre Sage since he came in? He came in on a temporary basis in November 2023 and became the head coach there at Lyon, and he was fully appointed the summer after a fairly decent run of results in Ligue 1. Now, he didn't necessarily have the best start, but he did steady the ship, and Lyon were winning games, something they weren't doing beforehand. And importantly, they were keeping a few clean sheets as well. Despite the odd blip, Lyon, they're able to finish 6th last season, which is the best in the past couple of seasons. Now, last time they finished as high and qualified for Europe, they actually played us, so they haven't been in Europe since the 21-22 season. Yeah, so that's an interesting one for Lyon. Now, of course, it's a very different league, Ligue 1, isn't it? I would say it's quite a competitive league, which it is, outside of PSG. Obviously, PSG have got a lot of money and a lot of influence in the league there. And I don't know if they're going to be toppled anytime soon. We obviously saw them not win the league during COVID, but yeah, it's an interesting one, the French league. But Lyon aren't the force that they were, of course, back in the 90s when they were winning 9 in a row and things like that. They're definitely not the team that they were. They're still a decent enough side, and we'll get into why very shortly. But so obviously they finished 6th last year, which has made them qualify for the Europa League. But they are currently sitting 11th in the league. Now, you can't necessarily read too much into that because, of course, the league season's fairly new. We obviously aren't even second in our league currently. Doesn't mean we're the worst team in the world. Granted, we've had a couple of bad results in the league. But yeah, so they're the bottom end of the mid-table and 11th at the minute. As I say, it doesn't really mean anything because, Brest are 2 places below them in 13th. And look what they've achieved in the Champions League so far. Of course, I think Abdallah Sima is going to be a massive hero now for Brest, sadly. Which is sad. It would have been great to have kept a hold of him, but you know what? He's doing bits there, isn't he? He's doing absolutely well. So, if we go into their kind of results and performances in the season, it's not pretty looking really. They kicked off the season with a 3-0 loss at Rennes. They then had a 2-0 loss at home to Monaco, and then they managed to beat Strasbourg 4-3 at the end of August. So they still conceded a lot of goals. So obviously about 8 goals conceded in 3 games there, which, if that was us, there'd be some serious questions being asked. Then they finally got their first point of the season, the 15th of September, with a 0-0 draw at Lens. And then there was another defeat, 22nd of September, a 3-2 loss at home to Marseille. So yeah, very, very mixed bag of results. I think it's pretty safe to say that Pierre Sage is probably under a little bit of pressure at the minute. Obviously, they started the Europa League very well. With a decent 2-0 win over Olympiacos, who of course won the Europa Conference last year. Did very well to do that. Now, looking back at that game, Lyon, they did pretty much dominate the game in regards to chances for me. Olympiacos did create two, but they just couldn't take them. They really, you look at the game, the possession was fairly even, but, Lyon did have way more shots than they did. And don't get me wrong, the shots that Olympiacos did have, they really could have, they were good opportunities to score, but they just didn't have that quality in the final third, it didn't look like. And also on the flip side of that, Lyon's two goals, there was a bit of luck with both. Goal one should have been saved by the keeper for me, as it is kind of right at him at his area. Second one takes a bit of a lucky deflection for me. But then swings and roundabouts. Lyon did hit the post a couple of times, so there is that. Looked like Olympiacos scored late on via an own goal, but it was ruled out for offside in the build-up. So, of course, as we've seen already from Lyon, they do concede goals. And they were quite lucky to get away with not conceding in that match. But you know what? That's 3 points on the board for them. A very decent result. You could see from watching the game, they really do like a high press, especially from the kickoff. They really like to put teams under pressure. And that's kind of understandable with the kind of players that they do have in their team. That's something we're going to have to deal with tonight. The benefits for us, though, having Ibrox, and we're going to have that amazing European atmosphere, which is just going to be fantastic. But if we have a look at their lineup via Olympiacos, so they went with the back four of Maitland-Niles, Clinton Mata, who's an absolutely fantastic player. We'll get onto him a little bit shortly. Kalita Carr and Tagliafico in the back four. Now, there's some familiar names in the midfield. So they've got Taliso. They got Matic in the middle, just behind the striker. So, of course, the former Manchester United man. I think he's about 36 now. But, yep, he is there, and he's still a vital part of that Lyon side. They got Cherki who out on the left, who did score against Olympiacos. Up front, kind of three. They kind of play with a 4-3-3. They have Fofana. Through the middle, the number 10, Lacazette. We all remember him, Alexandre Lacazette from Arsenal. And then out on the right, sorry, out on the left. I don't know my left from my right looking at this. Ernest Nomana out on the left. Sorry, Fofana is out on the right. So just to confuse everything for you. So that's their kind of team. Now, lineup for tonight, I don't think it might change too much. Of course, Ben Rama probably will come into this side. Ben Rama, maybe he'll go alongside Lacazette, very possibly. Matic, I think, still midfield. I think the team will not be too dissimilar from the team that faced Olympiacos. But you might find they might have Vinicius in the back line. At left back, possibly. Obviously, Clinton Mata, somebody I did mention earlier. Clinton Mata, very decent player. Also, right wing, somebody I did mention, Nuama. Now, he comes from the African Right to Dream Academy. He joined and developed over at Norseland, which is a very similar story, isn't it, to, of course, the one and only Mohamed Diamande. And, of course, Diamande had a very similar path, getting to a bigger club than what he was at. And the same thing happened with Ernest Moama. He had a very similar path, and actually he did play with Diamande. They did feature together at Norseland for about a season and a half, I think. So that was quite interesting to read into. But of course, yeah, we are seeing a lot of good players come through the African Right to Dream Academy. Africa does produce some absolutely fantastic footballers who are applying their trade in Europe, and Norseland has always been a very, very good club for a lot of these starlets to go through. Now, it's hard to kind of predict their team because, they obviously, I mentioned the kind of players there. I do think Vinicius will come back in. I think Said Ben Rama will come back in. they didn't feature. They didn't start against Olympiacos. They tend to play with a 4-3-3, but their back line tends to shift from a 4 to a 3 at times. I think when they're in possession, I think it does shift at times if they're in a good bit of possession to a back three. That's understandable. They have that high press. So, yeah, they want to utilize the kind of extra man further forward. So that's kind of understandable. Very likely they probably will go with a 4-3-3 that will deviate throughout the game. That's kind of understandable. Personally, for me, I don't think we're going to deviate too much. Obviously, we've got Igaman, who can now feature because he doesn't need a passport to get into Govan because he's already got his work permit for the UK. But yeah, you look at the money that Lyon spent in the summer, and there's a staggering amount of money, really. I know French football isn't what it used to be when you used to watch it in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, but they still have a lot of money there. It's a very cash-rich league to a degree. 150 million euros has been spent on players this summer, including around 30 to 31 million on bringing centre-back Moussa Nikate in from Nottingham Forest. So it's a little bit of a Premier League connection. There's quite a few players that have played in the Premier League. 23 million to sign Aurel Mangala, from Forest as well, but he's out on loan at the minute. Matic, of course, former Manchester United midfielder, 36 years old and is still a major part of that team, and that's very good. He's looked after himself quite well. He does seem to suit the football out there in France. Very difficult times, though, that this team's found themselves in. Obviously, the results haven't gone the way that you would expect from Lyon. Now, don't get me wrong, the French league is a better league, than some leagues. So teams can beat each other. You've got a lot of quality in there. Obviously you got Monaco, Marseille, teams out with PSG that, can take points off you. And, even you look at teams like Brest, obviously they're in 13th, but, they're still capable of beating decent teams in the Champions League. So, yeah, no, I take the kind of league form in isolation. You look at us when we got to the Europa League final. We weren't doing amazingly in the league, were we? Obviously, you look at Lyon and the quality they have in the team, the amount of money they spent in the summer. They do have quality in there, and it can be just a moment of brilliance that quality creates that can put you a goal behind, can put you 2 goals behind very quickly. So it'll be interesting to see how these Lyon players handle the Ibrox atmosphere. Now, on the flip side of that, we've looked a little flatter in the league again against Hibs. Had a great goal to win the game, but we still look a little flat, don't we? However, again, you just don't know what you're going to get from us. If we were to put Europa League badges on the majority of the Scottish teams, I think, yeah, I honestly think we probably win most games. It's mad because on paper, Rangers should steamroller the teams that are in Scotland, really, and it's a fact we should do. Especially with what we do in Europe, but we don't. And I think it's a bit of a footballing culture shock, so to speak, for a lot of players that come to Scotland. Now, I'm speaking of Scotland at the minute, and I'm going to talk about physicality because I don't see in Lyon that physicality that you would kind of expect from a decent European side, because they are. I know they're in the Europa League, but they're still a decent European side. But I just don't see the physicality there. They do have vulnerabilities, so they can be gotten at. They really can. I really do think they can. Now, if I think in theory, we would be underdogs going into this match. I think that's fair to say. But you know, I'm confident, and there's no other way of saying it. I am confident. I think we will get something from tonight, whether it's a win or a draw. I don't think we're losing. I just don't think we are. The times obviously Lyon will be fancying themselves, and that is completely understandable because the last 2 times they've come to Ibrox, they've won and we haven't scored. They've won 3-0 and 2-0. So they've got every right to believe that they're going to win, and that's understandable. However, Lyon head coach Pierre Sage, he does say, and he did say in his press conference that they're going to have to put in a historic performance to get a result against Rangers. So that is at least the European teams are starting to take into account now that Rangers are a little bit of a different animal in Europe. They're not as easy as it should be when because a lot of teams when they're drawn against a Scottish side, probably are looking at 3 points really. But it's very different coming to Ibrox. It really is. But it's how we manage the game because as much as we could win 1-0, we could lose 4 or 5-0. They've got the quality in that team to be able to do that. And especially if they bag an early goal, the crowd gets nervy. That is a possibility. I'm not saying that's going to happen, by the way. I'm not. I don't feel that I've seen us enough times in Europe, especially in the Europa League, to know that that's not going to happen. Some other stats: we've won 7 and lost 12 of our last 27 matches against French opposition. Obviously, the latest being the Europa League clash with Lyon 3 years ago. Lyon have won 5 and lost 2 of their 8 meetings with Scottish teams, winning 3 of their 4 away games. So yeah, and Lyon are unbeaten in the last 7 Europa League away games, winning 6 of them. So yeah, but then you look at that, and you got to look at the current form for me, and it's the fact that Lyon have just lost one of their last 5 games of their latest 5 games and sit 11th in League One. So yeah, it's a weird one going into this one, and sometimes it can be I don't want to say it can give you false hope. No, not at all. But going into this, I do feel confident. I felt confident with the draw, and I know some will argue that Malmo was the game that we was technically the weakest game that we'll probably have, and that's an away match against a team that we haven't beaten before. So, we took care of that well. We got 3 points out of 3 so far, and hopefully we can make it 6 out of 6. And I think we can. I really do think we can. I think we're capable of it. I think personally, if we want to look now at predictions, yeah, to be fair, I got my last predictions right. I did. Last time around, for the Malmo game, I said that my head was saying 1-0 to Rangers and my heart was saying 2-0. Well, I should have listened to my heart there, shouldn't I? Yeah. Do you know what? It is a difficult one because looking at Lyon's European form, their only loss in the last 10 away Europa League games came at Atalanta, and they are a very good side. Very good side. Since then, they've beaten Sparta Prague, Villarreal, Porto, Everton as well. So, they know how to win in Europe. And it is something that I think that, especially in France, it's the only real avenue of winning a trophy really outside, because obviously PSG are gonna win the league. Well, very likely unless Lille do what they did before. But yeah, and you look at Lyon's Champions League form; they have beaten Man City twice and RB Leipzig. Yes, RB Leipzig. Well, we're in that club too for beating them. But yeah, no, I'd be interested to know what you think, guys. There is a poll at the minute. And I'll read the latest update from the poll on the Twitter page. So if you're not familiar, the Ibrox channel, we're on Twitter at the Ibrox channel. And that's where the majority of stuff gets put out because Twitter just is a bit of a better platform. Facebook's, it's not ideal, Facebook, and a lot of other ones. But I did put the poll out in the early hours of this morning. I think it was about 4:30 or 5 o'clock this morning. I did ask, can we make it 6 points out of 6 tonight? So 45% so far out of 42 votes. So thank you to everyone that has voted. So 45% reckon Rangers will win. 26% reckon it'll be a draw. 14% reckon Lyon will win. And 15% have voted for Beasley still haunts them. Yeah, that's a good one. But yeah, so that poll's still open. It's got 6,022 minutes left at the time of recording. That'll be on until kickoff tonight, and I'll read out the final results of that on the next podcast. But yeah, so what can I say? Players to look out for: Lacazette, team's captain. He's at his second stint at Lyon now. Scored 53 goals in 74 games in his first couple of seasons back at Lyon, which that's phenomenal, isn't it? So for me, we've got to keep him quiet, and we really do. We've got to be able to deal with that high press, and I think at times we'll have to look at getting our goals on the break. I really do, because that's where I think their high press can work in our favour. Now, it depends how they feel. First few minutes, they might get a bit of a shell shock. Teams do when they come to Ibrox. It is something that is very unique to us. So, yeah, we'll just have to see how that goes. But you know what? I'm going to go 2-0. 2-0 Rangers. I think it will be CD9, Serial Dessers. I think we'll bag one. And I'm going to go for Egerman. Yeah, I'm going to go for Egerman from the bench. In the second half, make it 2-0. What do you think, guys? Let us know on Twitter at the Ibrox channel. Now, obviously, I'll look to get a pod out after our game at the weekend, and I'll be able to review this game tonight, the Lyon game. Now, I was going to head to the London branch, but unfortunately, due to work commitments early tomorrow morning, when I mean early, I mean in the early hours of tomorrow morning now, I won't be able to make it, unfortunately. But don't forget, you can, if you are in the London area or the southeast of England, then head to RFCSA London, the London branch, London's oldest Rangers supporters club, been going since 1961. They are based at the Bermondsey Beer Keller on Tooley Street, just right under London Bridge. They're literally built into London Bridge. It's a fantastic venue, lots of bears there, and it's very good to watch the football. And you can get some Steiners there. And at the minute, it's Oktoberfest, so you can get a couple of Steiners a beer. So how good is that? That's what you want, isn't it? And if you've got an RFCSA London branch membership, you get 10% off the beer. So it's definitely something worth doing. I'll look to link up with Harvey again soon from the London branch. We had a very good pod a couple of weeks ago, chatting about all things London branch and Rangers in general. So I'll get him back on very soon. But that's been it for this wee mini preview. And obviously not too much in it. It was just more to kind of just scope out Lyon and kind of see what they might do, who their top players are, and kind of where they are in the league at the minute, just to build a little bit of a picture so we can kind of see maybe what to expect. But you know what it's like in football. Sometimes you just never know, because, end of the day, on paper, Rangers shouldn't be able to do anything tonight, but we all know they will. Right, guys, thank you ever so much for listening. I've been Andrew. This is the Ibrox Channel podcast, and I'll see you all very soon. Cheerio, bye, guys.
A Rangers podcast. This is the Ibrox Channel.